Welcome back, everybody. We're so pleased to have with us today Angela Zepeda, CMO of Hyundai. Angela has held senior positions at Low Campbell Ewald, Quigley Simpson, and in Ocean. Joining her is my good friend and good friend of DPAA, Mr. Paul Woolmington. Paul, for those of you that don't know, if you've been under a rock for your past 10, 20 years, Paul is CEO of Canvas Worldwide, a recently heralded agency as Adweek's Breakthrough Agency of the Year. Congratulations on that, Paul. He was also head of global ops at Y&R many years ago when I first got to know Paul. And then he became head chef at the Media Kitchen and co-founder of Naked Communications. Paul always runs interesting companies, sometimes with interesting names as well. Please join me in welcoming Angela and Paul. And remember, the question bar is on the side of the viewer. Hi, Paul. Hi, Angela.
Good morning. How are you,
Nice
Barry?
to see you guys. Great. And a good morning for you. Thanks for joining us at 8:16 in the morning from LA, right, Angela?
Yeah, LA, the larger greater basin of LA. Yes.
Exactly.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. And Paul is here. He may sound like he's coming from London, but he's been in America for so many years. So he is actually coming from well, are you downtown in your office or are you up at your house?
Yeah, downtown Manhattan. I wish I was in LA, but downtown Manhattan.
Well,
So
it's good to see you.
it's east, west coast, wherever. Yeah.
I'm glad you're going into your office, Paul. That's encouraging.
Actually, it's my home, but don't.
Oh,
it's my home.
okay.
It's the home office. Yeah, it's the home office.
But what is
Do you
interesting is
like how
Paul's house looks like my office.
Yeah, Angela and I thought we would coordinate, so we kind of have this library look in the background.
I love it. I love it. I actually like this look better than your garden view with the cleaners and the and all the men working around your house, Paul. Let's start off with Angela. Angela, this has been a banner year for Hyundai. Congratulations. I mean, you're doing really well. Tell us how and why that's happening in 2020, which has been a challenging year. And maybe you can kind of give us a sense of what happened from March on.
Yeah, you bet. I mean, it has been a wacky year for everyone. So we're not alone. We say around here, the market is the market is the market. So even in spite of things going weird, we still had a big job to do. And I'm going to hit my 1-year anniversary here at Hyundai as CMO this week. It'll be this Friday that our CEO, Jose Munoz, asked me to come on over, which has been an amazing ride. But who knew at that point in time in 2019 of October, which was a very good year for Hyundai. And there was a couple of things that happened that led us to that success. And the biggest part of it was we finally had the right products for the US. So Hyundai for a long time was a little long in the tooth with the sedan segment. And that had something to do with sort of our global platform. But the US market is very unique, and it's the biggest market and most important market for Hyundai. So it took a couple of years to retool, but then we finally had that full line of SUVs that we were so longing for with the launch of the Palisade, which is our 8-passenger vehicle, which has done so well for us here. But that was part of a lot of the good success. We also had the good fortune of having Jose Munoz come and be our CEO. He was previously at Nissan, and he's just an amazing leader, just so smart. And what he does know is the operations. So we had a lot of good things in place. At the end of 2019, we were up year over year from 2018, and that was because of all the good product we had. But then 2020, we also had really good sales in January leading into February. And we could see, though, trouble brewing with COVID because we're a South Korean owned company that got hit first. They handled it so well in South Korea, but we knew at some point we would have something to deal with here in the US. We just didn't know how big and how long and how wide. But there was a lot of good things that were done. I think just operationally and logistically, we had vehicles that were on their way from Korea on, ships. We had a lot of deployment across the country. And that was honestly one of our secrets to success through the really dark months of, let's say, April, May, June, was we actually had cars on the ground to sell for anyone who was in a position that they wanted a car. And honestly, if you were in the position to buy a car, that was a great time to do it. Everyone was putting incentives. you got the best deal ever of the century if you were able to buy a car at that time. And we were part of that initiative too. And we put other kind of consumer programs out in the marketplace. We relaunched our Hyundai Assurance and a lot of things that just brought a lot of interest and eyeballs. And then we also deployed digital retailing tools with all of our dealers, which Paul and I were talking, sometimes it takes a crisis to get behavior change. You want me to go back to Hyundai Assurance?
The dealers, yeah. So because this is a program, as I understand it, that you launched some years ago, but really became impactful during the COVID period. So I think that'll be interesting for our audience to hear how you were present in developing it, but how it really empowered your buying community during COVID.
Yeah, Hyundai Assurance was launched during the financial crisis. And it was a program that really said, Hyundai had your back. At that time, it was you could return your car to Hyundai if you felt like you couldn't make the payments any longer. And it was highly successful. I think people really liked the thought that there was this little safety net. And so when we saw this trouble brewing with South Korea and we were thinking about what we should do as a brand, we were very sensitive about even being on air, even saying, come in and buy a car. Was that the right tone? And yet we knew people might be interested in buying a car. And so we kind of played a little bit, like we do a little bit for the messaging of people who are interested in buying a car. And then we do want to relaunch Hyundai Assurance. So we did very quickly. By March 20th, we relaunched this program, but it was a little different than before. This program, if you were a new customer, there was a great incentive out in the marketplace, a 0% APR for many, many months. And then there was deferred payments. And then if you had issue with COVID before the end of this year, you could then defer your payments. Again, so that was really good for any new buyer. And then for our current customers, same thing. If you came into an issue financially due to COVID-19, then we would work with you in deferring your payments. So very, very strong message and very much appreciated. And we did have quite a few people say yes to that. So that just tells you the climate out there about how people were struggling and dealing with financial issues as the crisis kind of went to a head.
Good, and it also shows you how a good idea can be emblazoned when it's needed even more. So kudos and congratulations on that. And it does sound like that's possibly one of the reasons why you've accelerated ahead of your competitors and your retail is generally doing very well. So maybe you could talk about competition and retail versus fleet and all of that.
Yeah, really good question. We are doing well, thankfully. Everybody knock on something. The industry overall will be down from last year. That's expected.
You missed Paul's knocking. Paul, did that?
I did. He knocked on his own head for the wood on his head.
You know it's wooden, don't you, Angela?
I know you're so much deeper than that, but it is true. It's a struggle for everyone. Supply chain is complex with global manufacturers. And that was probably one of the biggest worries, which is making sure we had the supply chain moving. The other big concern right out the bat was ensuring that our dealers, who are such a critical part of this entire ecosystem, that they too felt like they were financially secure with Hyundai. And we put programs in place to help the dealers have some early success. And then at that case, that's all about wholesale, making sure that they would be able to take the product to get it, on the trucks to get to local dealerships. So if someone had a need to buy a car, it was there. And those were some of the things that we worked really, really hard on. That doesn't really have much to do with marketing and advertising, but I'll tell you what, it is a critical component because I can't put messaging on air if I don't have the vehicle on the ground. And so that, I would say, would be one of the primary reasons for Hyundai's success. We also have our plant in Montgomery, Alabama, and we did close that plant for about a month, just so we're not overproducing cars that weren't needed. But we also, that crew down there did an amazing job getting back up and running with all the COVID protocols with the factory workers down there. And so we were back up and running as one of the first OEMs to open up the factory in the United States. So those things really helped. From a marketing standpoint, we did take down our spend April, May. June was probably our lowest TRPs, but we were in market with messaging. We did not want to go dark. But we wanted to be smart. And so we basically deferred a lot of that spend and are now, pretty much back to business, starting in the third quarter, and now definitely with the fourth quarter, trying to start, end the year very strongly. So, and that's our partnership with Canvas, who helped us make a lot of those major moves. It's not easy. And we really taxed the team, but in the end, it was the right thing to do. So those are some of the things I think that had us come out on the other side is, it looks like we're one of the OEMs that's actually gained share in this wacky year. So we're very happy about that.
Congratulations. And I know it's a great partnership with Canvas. You mentioned that you didn't go completely dark. And of course, that's smart, as we've all learned over any downturn, that those brands that keep up some level of consistency don't have to claw themselves back into share of voice and share of market. So smartly done. And you also mentioned some great leadership done during this period. You and your CEO, Jose Muniz, have shown that. Any other thoughts on leadership this year, as that's a theme of our summit, is leadership through COVID?
Leadership has come up a lot. People ask me all the time, like, how do you see leadership, or what did it mean to you during this time? That's where I have to give a lot of credit to Jose. For those who don't know his background, he has a PhD in nuclear engineering. So he's just like the smartest guy in the room. But on top of it, I always tell people he has huge confidence, but he's not arrogant. And I think that's the big difference. He's actually a very nice person to work for. He's very fair. And he's very calm. He's very confident in decision-making. And we make decisions quickly. Which I don't know if that's always been part of the culture here, but we'd rather make moves and be very, I think, just responsive to the market instead of waiting. And I think we've done a really good job at that. And so I've applied that for my marketing team. I am back in our office, but I'm one of a very, small handful of executives. The rest of the people who were working here, somewhere around 1,000, I think, they're all working from home. And that's been a really big challenge. I mean, now how many months are we into this? Now I've stopped counting because I went back to work about 6 weeks ago in the office. But for the rest of people, I think that disconnect to just seeing people and the day-to-day drama of coming to the office has been challenging. So, and as a leader, it's hard to find the time to connect personally with people. But I think calling things out, even through email or text, I think have gone a long way. But I think being clear and being calm and being flexible, because we did make some decisions that then I would say less than 24 hours later, we said, no, we're going to actually do this now. And that's moving our agencies around like a tail but everybody was very good about it. I mean, if they were complaining, I didn't hear it.
Right. I want to talk about your agency, since we have the man in spectacles sitting there on our screens as well. It's great leadership, Angela, you and Jose. It's great to hear. Paul,
thank you.
You've been a great partner, I know, to so many brands over the years, and you've really helped put brands on the map. You've helped brands accelerate in competition. From the Canvas side, what have you seen about Hyundai's growth this year, and what do you attribute to the success of that? And I'll touch wood again for you.
No, thank you, Barry, and thank you, Angela. Honestly, it's a privilege to work with such an amazing team. And I do talk
Paul,
about the team.
I apologize, Paul, 1 second. I want to remind everybody that please put questions into your question bar. We've got two great leaders here, and for both or either one, please register your questions, and we'll read it to Angela and Paul. Thank you. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, it's a privilege to have such an amazing integrated team, and give credit also to InOcean, Canvas, obviously Hyundai as a kind of seamless team. And I think there's many lessons we've learned. I do agree with what Angela said about leadership, and with Jose, there's great alignment, there's great clarity in the communication. We all know what the goal is. The goals are very clear. There's not a lot of ambiguity. And I think that filters all the way, right the way through the organization. And that's where you start with great leadership. I think other things that we've learned under COVID have been things like, for example, the new consumer behavior. We have fanatically been looking at consumer behavior pre-COVID, during COVID. And what Hyundai was ahead of the curve in doing was really looking at the frictionless purchase process. And the assurance program is one beautiful example of that, but not limited to that. How the dealers work with customers, but what we've learned as a team, a marketing, media, advertising, communication team, has been also how do we take friction out of it? How do we work with greater agility? We'll use that word, speed. And there's that famous law, Moore's law. The Intel co-founder and CEO, Gordon Moore, made that. It was all about the compression of, obviously, the time compression and power. And I think we have a new now law. And I think Angela's leadership around how we as teams had to pivot to new communications, how the media teams had to look at the ways in which we could protect, look at, creating greater flexibility, how in months we did what would normally take a year. In weeks, we did what would take months. In days, we've done. And I think on behalf of, myself, and certainly I think Angela will reflect this, a huge thank you to the teams. But overall, I think was also kindness in the way that we worked with each other. There were very stressful times, but I always felt like there was an appreciation for what everyone did. Right down to the person that would be there at 2 o'clock in the morning, shipping trafficking information, which again, requires, every single part of the chain needed to work seamlessly in the same way that, building a car has a supply chain.
Yeah. It's really important during COVID. We're getting some answers in. And by the way, Angela, I like the way you speak about your CEO, Jose, who's brilliant and also evidently great in marketing, advertising, and auto sales. We have a board member, Jose Avalos, who is also actually an engineer, and tying in what Paul just said, he's one of the senior folks at Intel. You just quoted the Intel book, and he runs all retail and digital signage for Intel and is on our board, and also an engineer, but he understands advertising and marketing. I want to get to leading that into digital out-of-home advertising, which I know you guys have experienced a lot of. You've seen the power of digitization and all of that. So maybe Paul first, and then Angela, some thoughts on out-of-home, digital out-of-home, where it's going, and how you've played into the dynamic new capabilities of the medium.
Yeah, I mean, I'll kick it off by saying that prior to COVID, the market was moving to you. Clearly, the digitization of life, you were at the forefront of it through all your partners. And I think it coupled with personalization, clearly a huge trend is how can we be more contextually appropriate in how we reach people, but in what we say to people at the right, those junctions, those moments, those contexts. So I think that obviously COVID has had an impact on the industry at large. But I think, your membership, and I think we need to be cognizant of the fact that the long-term investment, the long-term trends are very much in your favor. And I do think that, once people get back, and we are seeing, depending on the states, people getting back into a bit more of a normal pattern of things, that, there will be that, your momentum will continue. So, I think it is a critical part of our media ecosystem. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just tell you. I mean, Paul, don't kill me for saying this publicly on this, forum, but I'm a huge fan of out of home, digital out of home. I mean, I live in Los Angeles. I mean, this is, a market where that makes a lot of sense, and there's so many great places for us to take that message and get in front of a lot of consumers in a big and powerful way. COVID has, forced us to make different decisions in the short term, but the long term, I can't wait to get back to some of these because I have amazing product to show off, and I want to do it in a big and fabulous way. And there's some amazing opportunities all across the country for us to do that with digital out of home. So, I think if anything, we had to make some hard choices through COVID. I mean, like all of our live sports, that's a big one we play in, that went away. So then what do we do? And, you know, normally you'd go to things like thinking about out of home and other type, but also too, then everyone was sheltered in place. I mean, there were some strange just dynamics of what could we really do. In cinema was a big one that we had a big buy for. And of course, no one is going to the cinema right now. So those things are difficult because we love those. We can't wait for them to come back because we do want to touch people right where they are with the right message. And, you know, this is where they live their lives. So that's where we want to show up. So can't wait till we get back to that very, you know, full tapestry of media channels that I think are all part of the customer journey for us.
That's great to hear.
Barry, if I could just, you know, give an uplifting note of thanks to you and the DPAA for what you've put on, and you know your leadership, not just on your self-interested topics. And I do think a theme, you know, it is. You know, we're going to get through this better together, and you know, we all need to be best in class, but we're always going to be better together. Whether it's working in cohesive teams, you know, as we have with Angela's leadership on Hyundai, or whether we're working internally. Internally, we have this theme, which is, you know, a whole of justice. You know, we all come together in order to, you know, be better together. And you know, if you take, you know, that philosophy forward, and I think also with our partnership with the media community, it really is. We are better together. So, you know, I hope that's a theme of hope as we move forward. We certainly have learned how much we need each other in this time.
That's great, Paul. That flows so much into our DPAA global theme of unity, community, connection, and talent. And what you mentioned, Angela, it's so heartening to hear you say that. You know, we will come out. We are coming back again. We've got a great campaign that's doing it. You know, the iconic, you know, screen vision, cinema screens, one of our other board members, like you mentioned, cinema. And in fact, even in terms of icon, you talked about great creative and your great brand, you know, Ocean Outdoor and Piccadilly Circus, where Paul used to live years ago, talks about brand fame and broadcast reach that we're delivering. I've got time for one last question. I'm going to read it to you guys. Thank you. It's from Ian Dallimore, who's one of the true leaders in the out-of-home space. He is basically in charge of innovation, digital, and so much of the growth at Lamar Advertising. And Ian has said, great panel, Angela, and I think I introduced him to Paul one time. How important, and maybe Paul starts with it, how important is measurement in the digital out-of-home buys, and what can the out-of-home industry do to be better on this front? If you have some thoughts on that, Paul.
Yeah, it's critical. You know, it's a critical underpinning. We are moving to business solutions. Obviously, the industry is going to move from just counting eyeballs. So, you know, I think you've got two challenges, but I would say you might be able to leapfrog the first one. We clearly need to understand who we're reaching, when we're reaching, how we're reaching. But at the end of the day, also start focusing on how can you prove the efficacy? How can you show a business result? So measurement, obviously, yes, there's the meat and potatoes of measurement, but ultimately, guess what? Angela is most interested in how we have proven that marketing is not a cost center, but is a driver of business success. So that's what you know, focus on that. And I think that, you know, that's the, you know, all I can say. But of course, yes, it's critical.
That's great, Paul. And I appreciate you using the term driving in this conversation with Angela. And you're absolutely right. What we found, you know, and we talked about this yesterday with Raja, who, you know, Paul, who's this global CMO of MasterCard, is that out of home used to be only at the top of the marketing funnel with reach and with branding. And now, because of mobile data, location data, and website attribution, we're able to tell when people are walking into retailers, into car dealers, and we could also tell when they are going to the site. So it is happening just as you asked, Paul. So you ask and it will deliver. Angela, I don't know if you had any final comments on this all?
Well, I totally agree with what Paul said. And, you know, there's amazing technology that's being developed all the time. I don't know what the solutions are to further the metrics behind digital out of home, but I will tell you, one of the things we do measure, and people never thought we could do it, is how many people go to our dealerships. And we work with a company called Place IQ, and it is important for us to know because we didn't know if we were driving people actually to the dealer. Now, it's not a perfect science because dealerships are messy geographic platforms, and are they there for service, or are they just dropping someone off, or are they actually buying a car that day? But it does give us a good indication of how many people were driving there. And that's done all through someone's phone, so they can pick up the signal. So there are things that can be done that show that someone's at least in your area and seeing at least what's out, you know, in the marketplace. And I think that's very helpful. And that as a marketer, that helps me know that I'm getting the people that I'm hoping to get with those dollars. And then that helps me, you know, qualify that with our CEO and our CFO, who very much do think of this as a fixed marketing expense in the moment. It's not an investment. However, it is an investment of our brand and what needs to move forward. But it is critical. The more measurement we have, actually, the better. So we'll take it all.
That. And Place IQ is also a valued member of DPAA.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad I gave him a shout out then.
And part of what we do is we have everybody work together. So when an Ian Dallimore comes in from Lamar, he can show Place IQ data, et cetera. So look, you guys have been terrific. I knew you would be. I thank you, Paul and Angela, so much. And actually perfectly following this Hyundai success story is we're going to go to a video from GSTV, or Gas Station TV. So thank you guys very much. Let's take a look at this GSTV video. GSTV is led by another board member, Sean McCaffrey. They have the audience. They're data-driven, as Angela and Paul were inquiring, and you can also get attribution. So let's go to the video right now. And it may take a moment for the video to load. In the meantime, check out our sponsors below on your screens to see that. The video will take just a moment. Thanks, folks. And thank you, Angela and Paul.
Thank you, Barry. Good to see you. Bye, Paul.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Barry. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.